All right, so are you curious about AI agents, like how they're actually being built to solve real problems? We're going to dive deep into that today.
Sounds good.
Using insights from Anthropic, a
Yeah,
company that's working directly with teams on the cutting edge of this.
Mm-hmm.
To set the stage, they just published an article.
They did, yeah.
December 19th, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Building Effective Agents, very aptly titled.
Straightforward. Love it.
And to make sure we're all starting on the same page, when we say AI agent,
Yeah.
we're talking about a system where the language model, the LLM,
Right,
is
yeah.
making its own decisions.
Right.
It's not just following pre-programmed steps. It's choosing the tools and methods to achieve a goal.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a big distinction from what we might call, simply workflows, which
Yeah.
are more like fixed recipes.
Sure.
Agents have that dynamic, almost improvisational quality to them,
It is kind of
which is both exciting and, let's be honest, a little unnerving.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get to the unnerving part, let's start simple.
Okay.
One thing that Anthropic emphasizes is not overcomplicating things.
Right.
They actually say that sometimes the best approach is just optimizing
Yeah.
a single LLM call.
Yep.
So why would that be enough?
Well, think of it this way.
Okay.
You're trying to get information from, like a really smart but easily distracted friend.
Okay.
If you just blurt out your question, you might get a rambling off-topic answer.
Uh-huh.
But if you give them some context, remind them of relevant facts,
Mm-hmm.
or phrase your question very precisely,
Okay.
you're much more likely to get what you need.
Right.
So that's what optimizing a single LLM call can do.
So it's about being a good prompt engineer,
Yeah.
giving the LLM what it needs to succeed without building this whole complex system around it.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But sometimes a single call just won't cut it.
Right, right.
And that's when we step into the world of workflows,
Workflows.
where tasks are broken down into steps.
Yep.
And this is where we see that trade-off between predictability
Yeah.
and flexibility, right?
Exactly.
Workflows are like meticulously planned recipes, and agents are more like...
Yeah, like a seasoned chef who can just whip something amazing up with whatever's on hand.
Exactly.
A perfect analogy.
Okay.
Yeah, and just like there are different types of recipes.
Mm-hmm.
There
Yeah.
are different types of workflows,
Okay.
each suited to a particular kind of problem.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm drowning in customer service requests.
Okay.
Each one's a bit different. I
Yeah.
can't possibly handle them all myself.
Right.
What kind of workflow would be my AI life raft?
Oh, that's where routing comes in.
Okay.
Imagine an AI traffic cop directing each incoming request to the right specialist.
Okay.
Like, having separate lines at the DMV for driver's licenses,
Uh-huh.
vehicle registration, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Much more efficient than one person trying to do everything.
And that's all managed by an LLM.
It is, yep.
It's deciding which, department
Right.
each request goes to.
Exactly. So it
Uh-huh.
could analyze the content of the request,
Uh-huh.
the customer's history,
Okay.
even the time of day,
Right.
and then route it accordingly.
So no more bottlenecks, just smooth.
Just smooth, automated flow.
All right, so routing keeps things organized.
Yes.
But what if I have a massive task,
Okay.
like moderating content
Uh-huh.
on a platform with millions of users?
Yeah.
That's where it sounds like parallelization
Right.
would be key.
Absolutely. Think of it like this.
Okay.
Instead of one person reading every single post,
Mm-hmm.
you have a whole team working simultaneously.
Right.
So with sectioning, each LLM focuses on a specific aspect,
Right.
right? Like checking for offensive language, misinformation, or spam.
So it's like having specialized content moderators,
Exactly.
each with their own area of expertise.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Especially when you're dealing with huge volumes of data. And then there's voting, where multiple LLMs analyze the same piece of content
Okay.
independently.
Uh-huh.
And if any of them flags a potential issue,
Right.
it triggers further review.
Gotcha.
It's like having a panel of judges rather than a single decision maker,
Okay.
which can lead to more robust and unbiased outcomes.
And Anthropic actually uses this for something as critical as code vulnerability checks, right?
They do, that's right.
Like they're not just relying on one LLM
No.
to catch potential security flaws.
They run it through multiple LLMs,
Wow.
each with a slightly different perspective.
Okay.
If even one of them raises a red flag, it's a signal to investigate further.
That's how seriously they take security in these systems.
Absolutely, yeah.
So parallelization is all about scaling up and getting like a more comprehensive analysis.
Yes.
But I'm guessing things get even more complex when the task itself is unpredictable.
Right.
Like, what if the steps needed to complete the task aren't clear from the outset?
You're thinking about situations where a simple linear workflow won't cut it.
Right.
And that's where the orchestrator worker model shines.
Oh?
So imagine you're writing code for a complex feature.
Hmm.
And as you dig in, you realize you need to make changes to multiple parts of the system
Right.
that you didn't anticipate.
That's every developer's nightmare.
It is, yeah.
Suddenly, a simple fix turns into a massive refactor.
Exactly. But with an orchestrator workflow,
Yeah.
you have a central LLM acting as a project manager.
Okay.
It can assess the situation,
Uh-huh.
dynamically assign subtasks to specialized worker LLMs,
Okay.
and adjust the plan as new information comes in.
So it's like having a super smart project manager who can not only see the big picture,
Yes,
but also adapt to changes on the fly.
it is. It allows you to tackle complex tasks that would be nearly impossible to pre-program
Right.
in a traditional workflow.
Wow.
The orchestrator LLM makes those judgment calls,
Uh-huh.
ensuring that the right workers are doing the right jobs at the right time.
This is starting to sound a lot like how human teams work,
Yeah,
with different specialists collaborating
Yeah.
under the guidance of a leader.
that's a great observation.
Yeah.
And it highlights a key point.
Okay.
These workflows are often inspired by human organizational structures
Mm-hmm.
and problem-solving approaches.
Interesting.
We're essentially taking what we know about effective collaboration
Yeah.
and applying it to the world of AI.
Wow. Okay, so we've got routing for handling diverse requests.
Yeah.
Parallelization for scaling up and getting multiple perspectives. And the orchestrator worker model for managing complex, unpredictable tasks.
Yes.
What's the last workflow type we need to cover?
The final one is the evaluator optimizer workflow.
Okay.
And this one's all about iterative refinement,
Mm-hmm.
like having an editor critique a writer's work
Okay.
and suggest improvements.
So like a built-in quality control system.
Exactly. One LLM generates a draft,
Uh-huh.
and the other LLM acts as the critic, evaluating it against certain criteria
Right.
and suggesting ways to improve it.
Gotcha.
And this could be anything from refining a piece of creative writing
Okay.
to optimizing a complex engineering design.
Yeah, and I bet this is especially valuable for tasks where there isn't one clear right answer, right?
Absolutely.
Like with creative writing or translation,
Yeah.
there's always room for interpretation
Right.
and stylistic choices.
The evaluator LLM isn't necessarily looking for a single correct solution.
Right.
It's more about finding the best solution that meets the specific requirements of the task
Right.
and aligns with the desired style or tone.
So with these workflows, we're already seeing some pretty sophisticated applications of LLMs,
Yeah.
but I have a feeling things get even more interesting when we move from workflows to truly autonomous agents.
You're right about that, and that's precisely what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, folks.
Definitely.
We'll be back after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back. All right, so we've laid the groundwork with these different workflows, but now it's time to get to the really mind-blowing stuff.
Okay.
Autonomous agents.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see these agents actually starting to work in real-world settings.
Yeah.
Not just as research projects.
Right.
And it's all thanks to LLMs becoming much more capable
Okay.
in some key areas.
All right, break it down for me. What are the skills
Sure.
that take an LLM from following instructions to acting like an agent?
Well, we're talking about the ability to truly understand complex instructions.
Okay.
Not just process keywords.
Right.
Then there's reasoning and planning,
Mm-hmm.
like figuring out the steps needed to achieve a goal,
Okay.
even when it's not spelled out explicitly.
Gotcha.
And of course, agents need to be able to use tools reliably,
Right.
whether that's a search engine, a calculator,
Okay.
or even a code editor.
Hold on. A code editor. You're saying LLMs are writing code now?
Yep.
Like actual software?
It's not just theory anymore. Anthropic's article talks about their coding agent.
Uh-huh.
That's tackling tasks from something called SWE Bench.
Okay.
And this benchmark uses real coding problems
Mm-hmm.
pulled from GitHub issues.
Okay.
So it's not some simplified toy example.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So this agent gets, like, a description of a bug
Right.
or a feature request,
Uh-huh.
and then it actually writes the code to fix or implement it.
Exactly. And it can even handle tasks that involve changes across multiple files,
Oh, wow.
which is something that would trip up a lot of human programmers.
Okay. I'm officially blown away.
Yeah.
But with all this autonomy, there must be a huge risk of things going wrong, right?
Oh, absolutely.
What if the agent misinterprets the instructions
Huh.
or writes code that's buggy or even malicious?
That's a crucial point, and Anthropic really stresses the need for like extensive testing and safety measures.
Okay.
It's like teaching a teenager to drive.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't just hand them the keys and say, good luck.
Right.
You'd start with simulations,
Mm-hmm.
then supervised driving,
Yeah.
and gradually increase their freedom as they demonstrate competence and responsibility.
So it's a similar approach with agents.
It is, yes.
Start with controlled environments,
Uh-huh.
carefully monitor their actions,
Exactly.
and only give them more autonomy as they, prove themselves.
Precisely. And even then, you need to have guardrails in place to prevent unintended consequences.
Okay.
Right. So, for example, you might restrict the agent's access to certain tools or data,
Right.
or have a human review its actions before they're implemented.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like having a safety net for a trapeze artist.
I like that.
You want them to soar and perform amazing feats, but you also want to make sure they don't come crashing down.
Great analogy.
Now, we've been talking about workflows and agents as separate things,
Yeah.
but the lines can get a bit blurry.
Well.
In reality, developers often combine and customize these building blocks
Uh-huh.
to create hybrid systems.
Absolutely.
So it's not a case of choosing either a workflow or an agent. It's more like having a toolbox of techniques that you can mix and match.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on the problem.
Right.
And one of the key concepts that comes up here
Yeah.
is the idea of an augmented LLM.
Augmented LLM, right?
It's basically about enhancing the LLM's capabilities with tools like retrieval and memory.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like giving the LLM extra resources to work with.
Yes.
Kind of like providing a chef with a well-stocked pantry and a set of sharp knives.
I love that analogy.
And what's really exciting is that we're seeing the emergence of frameworks and protocols that make it easier for developers to integrate these tools.
Right, yeah.
Anthropic mentions their model context protocol,
Yeah.
which allows developers to connect their LLMs with various third-party tools.
Right.
So opening up a whole world of possibilities.
It does.
That's fantastic. It means you're not limited to just the tools that come built in.
Right.
You can customize and extend the LLM's capabilities to fit your specific needs.
Yeah, exactly. It's like having a modular system where you
Right.
can swap out different tools and components as needed.
That's cool.
This kind of flexibility is essential for building truly adaptable and powerful agents.
But with all this talk of frameworks and protocols,
Yeah.
it's easy to get lost in the technical weeds.
Uh-huh.
What's the best way for a developer who's just starting out with this stuff
Sure.
to avoid getting overwhelmed?
Well, Anthropic actually has some great advice on that.
Okay.
They suggest starting with direct LLM API calls
Okay.
and building from there.
All right.
It's like learning to cook from scratch before relying on those meal kit services.
Uh-huh.
You gain a deeper understanding of the ingredients and processes involved,
Right.
which makes you a better chef in the long run.
So don't jump into complex frameworks right away.
Right.
Get a feel for how the LLM works at a fundamental level.
Yes.
And then explore those frameworks once you have a solid foundation.
Precisely. Frameworks like LangChain, Bedrock, Rivet, and Vellum can be incredibly powerful tools,
Uh-huh.
but they're not magic bullets.
Right.
You need to understand the underlying principles to use them effectively.
All right, so we've covered the agent's internal capabilities.
Yes.
But what about its interaction with the outside world? How does an agent actually control a computer?
Yeah.
Or access different tools? Is there some kind of special interface?
That's where the concept of the agent-computer interface, or ACI, comes in.
ACI.
Think of it as the equivalent of a user interface. But for agents instead of humans,
Gotcha.
it provides a way for the agent to interact with the computer's operating system, files, and applications.
So it's like a dashboard or command center for the agent to control its digital environment.
Exactly. And here's a fascinating insight from Anthropic.
Okay.
When they were building their coding agent,
Mm-hmm.
they actually spent more time optimizing the tools in the ACI
Really?
than they did on the overall prompt.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
Why was that?
They found that even small details in how the tools were designed and documented could have a huge impact on the agent's performance.
Wow.
For example, they initially used relative file paths in their coding agent,
Okay.
which caused problems when the agent moved outside the root directory.
Uh-huh.
So by switching to absolute file paths, they eliminated a whole class of errors
Oh.
and made the agent much more reliable.
So it's like making sure the tools are ergonomic and intuitive to use,
Yeah.
even for an AI agent. You wouldn't want a chef to have to wrestle with a dull knife or a clunky blender, would you?
Exactly, and it highlights the importance of careful tool documentation and testing.
Right.
You need to put yourself in the agent's shoes, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and think about how it will perceive and interact with the tools you're providing.
It sounds like building effective agents is as much about good design
I think so.
and user experience principles
Yes,
as it is about technical prowess.
absolutely. It's a holistic endeavor that requires a deep understanding of both AI and the environments in which these agents will operate.
All right, we've delved into the technical details,
Hmm.
but now let's bring it back to the real world.
Okay.
What are some concrete examples of where these agents are already making a difference?
Anthropic highlights two key areas: customer support and coding,
Okay.
both of which have seen significant advancements thanks to agent technology.
Let's start with customer support.
Right.
It's easy to imagine how AI agents could handle those like routine inquiries,
Right.
freeing up human agents to deal with more complex issues.
Mhm.
But are companies actually using this in practice?
They absolutely are.
They are.
And what's even more interesting is that some companies are experimenting with usage-based pricing models
Okay.
for their customer support agents,
Interesting.
meaning they only charge when an issue is successfully resolved.
Wow. Okay.
This shows a real confidence in the capabilities of these agents.
That's a bold move. It seems like companies are betting big on the effectiveness
Hmm.
of these AI-powered customer support solutions.
It makes sense, though, if these agents can consistently resolve customer issues without human intervention.
Right.
It could lead to significant cost savings and improved customer satisfaction.
And what about the coding side of things? We talked about Anthropic's coding agent tackling those SW bench tasks,
Right.
but what other applications are there?
Well, imagine having an agent that can help you debug your code,
Okay.
suggest improvements, or even write unit tests for you.
Wow.
These are tasks that many developers find tedious and time-consuming,
Yeah.
and agents can potentially automate them,
Uh-huh.
freeing up developers to focus on more creative and strategic work.
That would be a game changer for so many developers. It would be like having a pair of extra hands, or maybe even an extra brain
Right.
to help you tackle those coding challenges.
Exactly, and the beauty of coding is that the results are easily verifiable.
Right.
You can run automated tests to see if the code works as intended,
Yeah.
and the agent can use those test results as feedback
Uh-huh.
to iteratively improve its solutions.
Right.
It's a perfect domain for agents to learn and evolve.
It sounds like coding agents are becoming an increasingly valuable tool in the developer's toolkit.
Absolutely.
But with all this automation, I can't help but wonder about the role of human developers.
Yeah.
Are we heading towards a future where coding is done entirely by AI?
That's a question that's on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that even the most advanced coding agents still operate within the boundaries set by human developers.
Right.
They need to be given instructions,
Mm-hmm.
provided with context,
Okay.
and their output needs to be reviewed and integrated into a larger system.
So it's not about replacing human developers,
Right.
but rather augmenting their capabilities and freeing them up to focus on the more creative and strategic aspects of software development.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between a skilled artisan and a factory worker.
Mm-hmm.
The artisan still has a crucial role to play, even in a world where machines can automate many of the repetitive tasks.
That's a great way to put it. And I think it highlights a key point about AI in general.
Okay.
It's not about replacing humans.
Mm-hmm.
It's about empowering us to achieve more than we ever could before.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
What are the most important takeaways that our listeners should remember about building effective agents?
Well, Anthropic really emphasizes three core principles: simplicity, transparency, and careful tool documentation and testing.
Okay.
So let's break those down.
Okay.
Simplicity is about starting with the simplest approach that can solve the problem.
Right.
Don't jump into complex frameworks and architectures unless they're truly necessary.
Makes sense. Don't over-engineer things, especially when you're just getting started.
Exactly.
And what about transparency? Why is that so important?
Transparency is crucial
Mm-hmm.
because it allows us to understand how these agents are making decisions.
Mm-hmm.
This helps with debugging,
Okay.
building trust in the system, and ensuring that the agent's actions align with our values.
Gotcha.
It's like having a clear audit trail for every decision the agent makes.
So it's not just about making sure the agent works correctly, it's also about making sure it works in a way that we can understand and trust.
Absolutely.
And finally, tool documentation and testing. Why
Yes.
is that so critical?
This is about recognizing that the agent's environment and the tools it uses are just as important as the agent itself.
Okay.
Carefully design, document, and test your tools to ensure that the agent can use them effectively and reliably.
Okay.
Remember Anthropic's example of switching to absolute file paths in their coding agent?
Yeah. Yeah.
That seemingly small change made a huge difference in the agent's reliability.
It's a great reminder that the devil is often in the details, especially when you're dealing with systems as complex as AI agents.
Exactly. Building effective agents requires a holistic approach that takes into account not only the agent's internal workings,
Right.
but also its interactions with the external world.
Yeah.
It's about creating an ecosystem where agents can thrive and collaborate with humans to achieve amazing things.
Well, this has been a fascinating exploration of the world of AI agents.
It has.
It's clear that we're only just beginning to scratch the surface
Yeah.
of what's possible with this technology.
Absolutely.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's wrap things up
Okay.
with some final thoughts for our listeners.
Mhm.
It feels like we're at this incredible turning point, almost like the early days of the internet, where no one knew quite what was coming, but there was this sense of immense possibility.
Yeah, I agree. And just like the internet transformed communication, commerce, and countless other aspects of our lives,
Right.
I think AI agents have the potential to be just as revolutionary.
We've talked about customer service and coding, but
Right.
what other fields could you see these agents impacting?
Well, healthcare is one area that comes to mind.
Okay.
Imagine agents that can analyze medical records,
Uh-huh.
assist with diagnosis, or
Right.
even help with drug discovery. They could also play a role in personalized education, tailoring learning experiences to individual students' needs and learning styles.
It's almost like having a personal tutor
Right.
or a medical consultant available 24/7.
Exactly.
And not just for individuals,
hmm
but what about the potential impact on businesses and organizations?
That's where things get really exciting.
Okay.
Imagine agents helping with financial forecasting,
Uh-huh.
optimizing supply chains,
Right.
or even designing more sustainable and efficient cities.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah.
But along with all this potential come some serious questions, right?
Of course.
We've touched on the safety aspects,
hmm
but as these agents become more integrated into our lives,
Yeah.
how do we ensure they're used ethically and responsibly?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's something we need to be thinking about very carefully.
Right.
We need to establish clear guidelines for developing and deploying these agents, addressing issues like bias, fairness, and accountability.
So it's not just about the technical challenges.
Right.
It's also about the societal and ethical implications.
It is. Yeah.
And it sounds like we need to have those conversations now
We do.
before this technology becomes so widespread that it's difficult to control.
Exactly. We have a responsibility to shape the development of this technology in a way that benefits all of humanity, not just a select few.
Right.
And that means engaging in open and honest dialogues about the potential risks and rewards.
It's a bit daunting, honestly.
It is, yeah.
But I think it's also incredibly exciting. We're at the forefront of something truly transformative.
Absolutely.
And we have the opportunity to shape its trajectory.
And that's a privilege we shouldn't take lightly.
Yeah.
We need to approach this technology with a sense of wonder and curiosity, but also with a deep awareness of its potential impact on our world.
Well said. So for our listeners who are just as captivated by this topic as we are, what resources would you recommend they check out?
Well, Anthropic's article, which we've been discussing throughout this deep dive, is a great starting point.
Okay.
It provides a clear and practical overview of the key concepts and challenges involved in building effective agents.
We'll definitely include a link to that in our show notes.
Perfect.
And are there any other books, websites, or organizations that you'd recommend?
There are a lot of great resources out there,
Okay.
and new ones are popping up all the time.
Right.
I'd encourage listeners to follow organizations like OpenAI, the Partnership on AI,
Okay.
and the Future of Life Institute.
Gotcha.
They're all doing important work on AI safety, ethics, and policy.
Fantastic. And of course, we'll continue to explore these topics here on the Deep Dive.
We will.
So be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for future episodes.
Definitely.
And in the meantime,
Yes.
keep learning, keep asking questions,
Uh-huh.
and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI.
That's a perfect note to end on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, stay curious,